Welcome, everyone. I'm Angelo Robles to Angelo Robles' Effective Family Office podcast, where I look to distill the best practices and best ideas of the world's most successful families and their family offices. I hope to provide thought-provoking opinion and feature amazing thought leaders to our listeners of the podcast with an eye towards the future of the family office. Well, this is an interview that I've been very much looking forward to now for a couple of weeks. He's one of my favorite people in the world, not just socially, but that as well, but in terms of interviewing on my podcast and at our events at Family Office Association. The title of today's podcast and session is Thriving in the Present Future. And our special guest is Dr. Stephen Rudin, MD. He's been a member of the Family Office Association and a very valued one for a long, long time. He's an elder in the community and with intergenerational families. He's an educator, he's an entrepreneur, and he's someone who really has been amazing to a lot of our families within Family Office Association. We actually haven't had him on a podcast in probably 2 years. And safe to say, a lot has happened, including in the midst. If you're hearing this 2 years from now, this is during the midst of COVID-19. So we have lots to catch up on. What I am going to do to give context to our conversation today is I'm going to read a rather long open, but if you're just hearing this abruptly or directly, it's important to have a context to the conversation that I'm going to have with Dr. Rudin. And here it goes. Again, thriving in the present future. Life has become disrupted. There is no return to the old abnormal. Children, young adults, professionals, families, and family offices are in their residences, often attempting to apply past knowledge to an uncertain future. Never has a second industrial revolution concepts and constructs have been so irrelevant. We are at this moment feeling disadvantaged by being at a distance, but it needs to be so. What we learn, the tools and techniques, we learn to master the technology we deploy may yet turn all of this to the good. The anticipated future of 5 or 10 years to come and the ecologically, medically, and politically chaotic present have been condensed into our present future, a moment of reflection and decisive action. What has come to light is the need to identify that which we take place immediately to reinvent ourselves, reimagine our future, and reconvene as a stronger and better community. Even before COVID-19, there was a great deal of anxiety about the future of employment in all sectors of the global economy, anticipating the ubiquitous deployment of artificial intelligence. The ongoing pandemic and corollary crisis has drastically accelerated deployment of big data, sensors, trackers, and AI, enabling us to thrive at a distance. The knowledge and human soft skills embodied in the experiential curriculum for thriving in the present future can help determine our response to the current confluence of crises. Our interaction with exponential technologies creates a shift in the consciousness and capabilities of humanity. These shifts can be made to our great benefit or leave us enslaved by them and by totalitarian entities that would use them to limit human freedom and thriving. Wow, Stephen, that was quite the open. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Angelo. I'm delighted to be here and to be back on FOA podcast.
Well, I have a whole series of questions and can't wait to jump right into it. I did give a bit of an abbreviated introduction of yourself, which really is a Machiavellian and a great background. Is there anything you'd like to add before I begin in terms of giving our audience the context of your background and or the discussion we're going to have today?
Sure, thank you. I thought it was interesting, first of all, that you left it to me to kind of read the last paragraph of the introduction. So I want to thank you for that. I thought that was a very interesting approach. And that was to say to everybody, and I thank you for reading, you asked for a brief description of why I got involved in looking at creating a participating in creating a curriculum for the present future. And the point was there's a choice for everybody to make. We're home, our children are home, we're working at a distance. If you had a summer or 6 months or a year, what would you really choose to learn? Would you have your children do a chapter in a mathematics book? Would you complete assignments? Would you assume that learning at a distance was the same as the interaction you have by being out in the world and meeting people and listening to their conversations? Or would you instead look at the current situation, and I'll talk about why we call it the present future, but would you look at that, would you ask yourself, how can you make yourself, your children, your family offices as relevant as possible to the vision, to the mission, to the 5 capitals that my own mentor Jay Hughes always talks about, to humanity's collective efforts to kind of write what the current Saturnalia, the kind of turned upside down of how everything was before, and to write it in a way that we have a best path forward. Do we just keep learning what we were learning before? Or is the way to increase our understanding of ourselves, to increase our capabilities, to create our neural capability, to increase our interaction with machines in a way that will make this, these lemons, so to speak, turn into lemonade, or at least the best possible path forward? So thank you for letting me complete that paragraph. And I think you also asked me to say something about my background. And as you know, it's I historically say as little as possible. It is true I'm an MD. There's nothing medical in this podcast, but as my mother used to say, she always wished I'd practiced medicine. Despite all my training, I don't. But I do appreciate the opportunity and the understanding it's given me in trying to be relevant during the COVID crisis. And with that, I'll leave it to you, Angela.
Excellent. Thank you, Stephen. Let's get right to it. How are you, and how are you moving through these very challenging times?
Thanks for asking. I think we've all gotten better at asking that. I think when we call each other now, we genuinely mean, among all of us, when we say, how are you? It's not so perfunctory anymore. We're wondering how our children, our friends, our family are, close by or far away. We really want to know how they are. We want them to know how we are. So in response, I am, on the one hand, certainly, at least momentarily, lamenting part of what was lost. And that was an absolute freedom to go out and enjoy the environment without a moment-to-moment concern about illness and death that has been so prominent in so many places and may yet be prominent for a while. It's uncertain. And so I certainly lament that we are in the midst of this circumstance, but I'm optimistic. And I am trying to think in 360 degrees about health and well-being of individuals, and yes, also about health and well-being of the ecosystem that keeps us well, so that we all have the necessities of life, food, water, freedom, joy, lack of chaos. So I'm okay. I think that what I really am is, most importantly, I'm called in the moment. I'm trying to do what is most relevant. I think we now find people really authentically wanting to work at what is their true cause, what's their true calling. And I think as long as we're doing that work, we all thrive. And so I'm very much okay. I'm writing, and I'm participating with a group of scientists who were collectively looking for novel ways to make the lethal virus not lethal, and working with a community of next gens and millennials who are creating a conversation about the future they hope to have happen.
That is for sure. And those of you watching by video, in audio, you're not going to get it. And no, it's not that I'm rude. As I did note beforehand, we have certain strategic members that unfortunately got the info on the invite late, and I need to monitor that a little bit and send them the link so they could join us. That was a very thoughtful answer and very personal from your perspective, Stephen, and I completely concur. So as an educator and a writer, you are naturally spending time dedicating yourself to understanding what learning in these times actually mean. I know you are working on a curriculum for the present future. And I was going to ask you originally, it's a vague term. What do you mean by the present future?
Well, in each moment, we're always at the interface of the present, each second, microsecond. We're always at the interface of the present and the next kind of second to come. In other words, our own futures. Time is a construct, at least for us in the way we are in an earthly, bound universe. Time seems a reality in our moment-to-moment existence on a non-spiritual plane. So we're always moving into our next future. But I think that there's a certain amount of planning, like what will happen in 3 years or 5 years or 10 years, that we've all anticipated. You can see it in different areas of our life. We've been told that, and we participate in the fact that different types of technology will continue to interface. Digital technology will continue to become a bigger part of our lives. So 3D printing, machine learning, artificial intelligence, big data, all of those things, I think we thought of them over the next 5 to 10 years as not so slowly moving us into a next reality. But I think what we're seeing now is at a distance, and I'm not hoping we stay at a distance by any means, but at a distance now, and in some ways continuing at a distance. I know the president said today that he hoped we go back to how things were. I think we'd all like to resume a more normal transformation into our future, but at a distance as we are at the moment, and as we'll probably be in some way moving into the next couple of months or years, some things being different. At that distance, technology is more of a necessity. We want to have better communication with each other. If we are not always going to work from home, or if some part of the population is not going to be safe without going out, if there's a widespread need for medicine in all kinds of ways, whether it's to promote a way of being healthier or a prevention of things that can be dangerous, technology will be necessary. And when that happens, in order to be relevant, there are skills that you'll need to have. The present, the future, all that technology, all of the change in our thinking, and maybe the change in our kind of consciousness, how we work together, has been pushed into a moment. And you can see that. You see it on the technology side as we kind of look to say, how can we bring ourselves closer, even if we're not always physically together? And you see it on a collective effort. If there was an idea that human beings, in the same way that when there's a fundraising effort on the internet and we pool resources, or a combining of our intelligence to solve problems by linking our computers, you're seeing different places where people are open sourced, combining their brain power and their computer power to try to come up with solutions that they agree with as we go forward and deal with the pandemic or the sequelae from it, the outcomes from it. That's a type of change in community architecture and thinking that's happening much quicker than one would have anticipated. Futurists might have told us that machines, artificial intelligence, big data, sensors, they will kind of move into I think Christian Krome uses the term a seventh wave. The great futurist Christian Krome, who I know you've heard in his book Humanification, talks about moving to a seventh wave in which machines are basically, programmed and taught to learn and teach themselves in a way that could aid humanity if they're programmed well, but could be harmful if they're programmed poorly and are out of control. And the challenge for humanity is to not try to outthink machines, but instead to kind of link up with itself functionally in terms of what we're doing, what we're sharing, and in terms of the consciousness that we have together. On a physical level, that would be thought of as being a functional syncytium. You know, billions of individual cells, human beings capable of their own thought and their own ideas, yet kind of linked to the idea of working collectively for a greater good, for a more confluent and functional society, in the same way the cells of your heart do.
I have lots of questions to follow up on that, but I'll start with one. As a father, as myself, I'm also a father, how does this relate to the education of our children, our families, and our family offices?
It's a great question. I would have, as somebody who's a mentor, actually more than an educator, I think of educators as people who formally go through the rigor of getting their master's, their PhD, and teaching large groups of people, as opposed to mentors who experiential share the lessons of their life and bring other mentors together to collaborate in educating people. I've been asked by many people, maybe because I've had so many careers and opportunities to think in different areas, what I thought was relevant. And my first response was to sit with it. The actually great advice of Sofia Sinaga, the person, a wonderful woman who is the co-founder of the Intergen Collab, who, quoting Orland Bishop, one of our other elders, JU's, myself, and Orland, first sit with it, make a space, it will kind of come to you. And so I had actually thought, well, what does that mean to respond to what should we be learning? And I decided to ask lots of people that I respected greatly what we thought would be important for people to learn, have them summarize it in a way that they thought was important, and then ask if they might participate in mentoring or teaching it on any number of platforms, so that we could share their thinking and their thoughts, and then let families and family offices interpret it in the way that was relevant for them. A kind of inspiration to consider certain ideas. JU's my wonderful mentor, much love out to you in Aspen. And so I imagine that there's no way for you to visit all 7 billion people on the planet and give them advice during this pandemic. So in essence, what if the great masters and guides and educators and thinkers in different areas could just share some information about what they might do in this time and what they might gather, so that families could process it in the way that they do, family offices can process it as they might, and benefit from that rich soil and what they want to plan for the future. That was the idea. And from that came a suggestion of 16 or so major areas, along with a willingness to participate in helping mentor that. It's not to say it's everything or that anything else isn't important. It was just a strong idea that looking at ourselves, where we are right now and how we got there in different ways. And from that, a progression through the other areas would be very rich in replanting ourselves, in fertilizing ourselves, in the absence of all going back to school right now, or in fact, rethinking structurally what school is. I don't have the hubris that would make me think I know how to do that, but we have an interruption. Law schools, medical schools, will they go back right now? So however long the time is that we're getting ready to fully go back to whatever the future is, what might be very beneficial. And that's what this curriculum for the present future is. It's a chance to feed your mind, your body, your spirit in your own setting, with yourself, with your family office, with your community, and understand how you're arrive at your purpose and everybody in your family and everybody in your family office makes that a better whole and contributes to the greater of humanity doing better right now. Relevance by knowing your purpose in your fullness and contributing it. I think if we do that, there's no way that we won't come through this and thrive. Viruses may or may not be smart. They're only part human, but humanity as a whole is brilliantly adaptive. We're just not functionally connected. Connect to ourselves and our best self and connect with each other. I think we have more than a fighting chance. And I think that anybody would want to be a leader for a community working like that. Any country would want to have citizens like that. Any world bodies would be thrilled to have citizens that both are their own individual best and their own strongly aligned for the best of a common good.
Very well put. And you did mention, which we'll get to shortly, kind of 16 key areas within a curriculum. And that will take a little bit of time, by the way, because it is 16, not one or two, for us to go through, at least abbreviated each of the 16. So again, we're not rushed for time. We want to do this right. But let me help to set that stage a little bit further, given what I said with each of us being fathers. Your child a little bit older than mine still a junior in high school. There must be anxiety and concern, which we're seeing and we've seen in all the work that we've mutually done with the younger millennials, with the next Gen Zers coming up, that even if they come from money, what purpose are they going to have in this new world, potentially this new world order moving forward? They can't socialize at the moment the way they used to. And now we're talking about education that is going to be more online. Isn't a lot of the value of, and I'm using these words very specifically, going to school, high school to college, learning is a part of it, but how you interact with others outside your family unit, how you're independent. It's often where you have, for many people, their first relationship with another person. That experience seems to be pulled from out from under them, and it may return, but it may look different.
Mm-hmm. Again, being very careful, no politics here. I support every effort from everyone to move us to a good present and future. So with that said, I'm not clear that all schools and all universities will go back in the summer, let alone the fall. Some will, some won't. Said without comment. Some people will choose not to do this, thinking things might become disrupted or continue to be interrupted. So yes, there's no question that we're at least momentarily in a period of disruption, and even if we can reset things to look for good or bad, similar to what I like to call the old abnormal, because I don't think we were in our best state of things. I think America's a great country, but I don't think we're necessarily in our best sense of America. I think with our educational system, I hope could incorporate more relevance for the future. We'd all hope to have everybody thrive and do better in that way. Social interaction. The younger people are doing better than our older population because they're accustomed to communicating digitally. And I could answer that and say, yes, we will miss that. Taking your children to an amusement park is more fun than the alternatives that I can think of. But people are working it. I think, again, we're always very careful on Apple Podcasts. We're not here to do anything commercial, but there are technologies that, for the moment, and that will exist then into the future, augmented reality technologies that will allow you and I to have this conversation, and there'll be an image of me in front of you, that in front of me 3 feet away. You'll be sitting here, and I'll be sitting there. A virtual. We won't be so distant because I won't see you on a screen. You'll be sitting right in front of me, and those technologies will also be usable for education. So we may only be seeing a representation, but they'll be accurate and three-dimensional and remarkable. And the ability to visualize things in 3D will take place. Technologies will take away some of the distance, but so will the technologies that allow us to go out and be together and thrive. Depending on who you are, if you think it's okay to just go out and expose yourself, that'll be fine. But for those who are looking for some additional way to feel safe, I think technologies will supply that as well. Of course, we want to be together as people. And yes, you would miss something to go to school. My son is beginning or planning to begin law school in just a few months, and his questions to the quite a few schools that accepted him are, what do you anticipate it will be like? Will I be in a room? What does it mean to go to school in Washington, D.C., in a school in Washington, D.C., if you're sitting in a house in New York City? Or a student that I mentor is going to school in Rome. That's her goal, to go to college in Rome. And she wrote an essay today. I, of course, won't name her, but she wrote her imagination of what it would be like. That's what the essay question, the prompt was. How do you imagine your first year at the American University in Rome? And she wrote this beautiful, heart-wrenching essay about the joys of Italy and Roman culture and what she expected to be doing. And so she said, what do you think? And I said, I think you should also include a paragraph of why you want to go to the university, even if you're learning in your room with classmates you might be sequestering with or sheltering with, or why the education there matters, because maybe the additional aspects will be interrupted. And how can you make that a better experience? I think maybe you should share with them how you can make university life better, even if some of the traditional offerings of person to person begin, and even if they're briefly interrupted by illness, how you're going to make your university better. As President Kennedy once said, it became more famous. The motto at Choate was, ask not what Choate can do for you, ask what you can do for Choate. I think that's true. That became, that's where, and that would ask what America can do for you, ask what you can do for America. He borrowed liberally from that quote, I think, but that's a good question to ask yourself. Ask not what everything you're expecting can do for you, but ask what you can do in every circumstance now. That's how we'll do our best. And the point of a curriculum was to have you learn about yourself, learn about your family, understand your spirituality, your relationship to love, your neurocognitive skills, and acquire ones to bring you to your fullest, and go through learn other information of vital importance, ethics, and what your beliefs are, and what you think truth are, and how it is or isn't being changed in a way you can deal with, what healthcare is, what medical ethics is, what all the things that are being changed or challenged are. And bring yourself to your purpose. And in every moment, and I'm talking about our 8-year-olds, our 10-year-olds, our 15-year-olds, our youngest generation, Gen Z, has a lot to offer in a time that's changing. We need to learn to work together with them in tandem. Millennials are incredible in this moment. The generation up and behind them need to work together with them. We have to learn about each other and understand our best purpose and turn into meaningful action together. And the point of this is, when you gather as a family, when you gather as a family office, if each one of the cells in that family office is at its best, and then working to perpetuate the work of the family office, the family office is participating to create an ecosystem that helps it thrive, I think we'll win completely.
I'll get back on track in a second, and I'm going to make more of a comment than a question because it's a deep rabbit hole that we'll do a future podcast on, but you hinted on it in some of your commentary, and COVID-19 is simply pushing it to the forefront. The future of education will begin to look very different. And that does bring into question what you described being online for perhaps heading into next year. The price that we pay for a college education, if we're not physically going to be there, is very possibly not needed. The land and space and buildings that these universities have. There will be a dynamic change that will occur, and the future of education will look differently. We see it now in other countries around the world. This is a very deep rabbit hole. You brought it up, I added a little bit of commentary to it, and let's make sure to come back in a month or two and cover that one because it does play into the conversation. But in staying back on track, could you talk about the curriculum for the present future, and really importantly, who is it for?
Sure, I'm going to, but you know what, Angelo, I'm going to follow you down that rabbit hole for a second.
Okay, go for it.
Because this is a necessary moment of unselfishness as well. The assumption that if you don't pay rent because you have no money or because your income has been diminished is very understandable. I can't pay. The assumption is, I shouldn't be thrown out of my house. My landlord should be kind. And I'm trying to think the most controversial point. On the other hand, it's difficult to remember that somebody else has a business or obligations. And I don't pick real estate for a special reason. I'm just saying, what's the first thing we all think about? We need food. We need a place to shelter. So naturally, one of the first places there's been controversy is people saying, I just can't pay my rent, and the government trying to have people not thrown out of their homes very kindly. And I'm saying yes. And as one of the most difficult things, always to remember what other pressures are people struggling with. And again, this is not at all a advocacy for landlords or landowners. It's only to say, if you pick something difficult and you try to see what's on the other side, you can apply that to everyone. You said education. The president of Brown, who's a fabulous woman, said, we need to make an effort to open the universities. Our university system, which may benefit from change and updating in some ways, and some schools were going to close regardless, they too only have so much in terms of what their ability is to withstand loss of students, loss of funds. They don't work. A few schools have a tremendous endowment, not most. Some are right on the edge. So when we're thinking we don't want to send our students back to school, when we're thinking we'll go in a different year, we should remember things may not be waiting for us. Not because they're not going to give us our spot, but they may not be existing. It's a very hard thing to do when we're under pressure, wondering about ourselves, to realize that the very things that we're planning to go back to also require some sustenance. I wouldn't necessarily, as a planner, want the job of trying to figure out how to meet everybody's needs simultaneously. It's certainly true if there's no economy that's actively being fed, you can't just sustain everybody without printing worthless money. You can't have different sectors of the economy be around for people when they're ready if they haven't at all had any lifeblood flowing through them in that time. So the question of what will we miss, what will we do? I think that schools remain an important part of our life unless things become so disrupted that it's like being in a state of war. I hope it doesn't get to that. So in the meantime, I think it's important both to ask yourself if going to school in your moment, if this is going to benefit you, if you have to take enormous loans to go to school, or you think that the first year of your schooling won't be what you're looking for. You might also think about, what can you say to that university? How can you help them? Can you pledge something on the back end of your career if you're asking to defer your education? Can you pledge some service or some money or something on the back end? Meaning, as you're watching out for yourself and is what you're planning to go to, understandably, a critical decision. What do you also want to do to think about whether or not the place that you hope to get your education, the community you hope to thrive in, how can you help it sustain itself so it's there for you? Again, I wouldn't make a statement to anyone. It's an individual decision. You're going back to school this year. Is your school going to be open? Do they have the resources to open for you? Are teachers going to teach? But the selflessness and the collaboration, offering, calling a school and saying, I have an idea for how to make education more worthwhile. I'm working with the former Assistant Secretary of Health, Jacques Garcia, one of the great minds of the country, great hearts, former head of the U.S. Public Health Service, where with a large team of people, we're just trying to imagine the future of a telemedical school. And many people with much greater expertise in actual health and healthcare and education are part of it. I'm there for disruptive thinking and technologies that might help. We're trying to think how are we going to create something that works in difficult circumstances, whatever they are in the future, but also has this element of feeling close, social connection, major relevance, incorporates technology, but prepares you to be relevant with technology. I think you have to keep looking 360 degrees in whichever direction we're moving.
Very well said. I would have follow-up to that, but again, we do have to keep the conversation moving. So my question was talking about the curriculum for the present future and who is it for?
Right. So in its general sense, it was designed for everyone, for every member of a family or a family office, in an age-appropriate presentation. You could teach almost anything to someone at a certain age, and you can have all members of a family office, and as you know, we share a belief that families and family offices are often a great hope for our future. They wield tremendous influence. They do amazing business. The members of families and family offices are very important in our society and our future. So having them thrive has always been very important to both of us. So what age is it for? Why don't we talk about the subjects for a minute and to make it easier to understand that?
Yes.
So the first one was, by consensus, by wonderful contribution, to spend some time, each member of our family, knowing ourselves. And again, when this pandemic began, I called Jay, who is in Aspen with Jackie, and said, some people have asked me if I will start teaching now and help them understand how to deal with this disruption. They said, teach what you've always taught. Teach the 5 capitals. It's just a deeper look at what they mean for us. The information's the same. We don't do disaster education. We teach what's fundamentally got us through here. But you might look more deeply in different ways in each element of those 5 capitals. And so that's really what this is really informed by. The first thing is knowing yourself. In order for family members to participate in understanding where they are, where their spiritual capital is, where their social capital is, where their intellectual capital is, whether we function as a learning system, and our financial capital kind of underpins our other 4 capitals. Who are you? So in this idea, we thought we would have people use an evaluation like Indigo, a wonderful education evaluation that lets you look at what your behaviors have been historically, and kind of categorizes them in areas that help you understand yourself, and what your motivators are, and help you understand that. All to the idea of getting to know yourself and your family will help you move towards your purpose, and you're being immediately relevant right now in everything you do. We want purpose and relevance in people's lives. It takes away your sadness and loss, and it makes the human potential and humanity's potential so much greater for all of us being relevant instead of sitting still. And you can see young people can be tremendously relevant all the time in all kinds of ways, in educating and connecting and communicating. And most of the great ideas come not when we're 90, not when we're 60. I think Einstein was in his 20s, right? In his great year, it's when you're young that you have your epiphanies. So we want to get those people learning and thinking and sharing ideas. They're a source, they're the soil of our brilliant hopes for the future, right? So the people we think about as our greatest thinkers, they're great thinkers, but they could be in their 30s now. There was a time when they were even more revolutionary. So what are the ideas? Know yourself, and the thoughts, the contributions to that were Indigo, maybe NLP. A lot of the things that we do are, this is the first category, neuro-linguistic programming. A lot of what we do, a lot of what our families do are programmed over generations. There's a way to study your patterns and look at your behavior in a way that you're not kind of subject to repeating what's always been done, but to look afresh at things. This kind of situation benefits from that kind of thinking. Meditation is extremely helpful in learning from the inside instead of being overwhelmed by the outside. And same is true of mindfulness. We put that in a different study. So Indigo, NLP, meditation, and having each family kind of look at their 5 capitals, which in the family office universe is very familiar, and understanding, right? Do you have a vision? Is it something you can agree on? Are you functioning as a learning system? Are you all thriving as you do that? That's really the point of the capitals. And then it's your financial capital that makes that possible. So that was the first subject, about knowing yourself and knowing your family. If you take Indigo and you find out that you're a person whose behavior is always trying to follow some tradition, and your child somebody who's always bucking the system, looking to be an innovator, you're going to understand there's going to be conflict. And if you're a person who can't stand conflict, there's going to be disruption. So understanding each other and then following the rest of the learning, so we learn to appreciate each other, create a structure and a vision that allows for different kind of people to work together. That kind of knowledge makes us functional even in the most difficult situation. What you see now is when you hear reports of families fighting, people hitting each other, everybody getting divorced, instead of knowing each other, appreciating each other, and getting stronger in the circumstance, what you can see is old patterns and everything flaring up without the ability to get out or kind of distract ourselves. The center isn't holding. So instead, we're suggesting turn to your center, understand it better, find your better self, your more understanding self. So there was know yourself, and the second thing was on the curriculum was ethics. If we live in a time of, and you can see it right now, whether it's vaccines, which is certainly part of a topic of medical ethics, your own informed consent, your own willingness to do things with it, that might be, instead, society may say it's utilitarian, everybody has to do something for a greater good. You still want to examine your own beliefs, whether you do it or not. If you come from a place of examining your own beliefs and making your peace with something or not making your peace with something, it's better than being herded like a sheep. So ethics, I think in general, understanding your system of core beliefs and your personal values is very important. This is not at all taking a political stand, it's taking a personal stand. We align or don't align in a more productive, purposeful way and just examining ourselves. And then we might come to terms with why it's our own decision or a decision to agree with a group decision. But at least we authentically examine who we are before it goes forward. So classical ethics is about that. If philosophy is the study of what is the good life, as Chris Hill once said, philosophy is just about what is the good life, what constitutes the good life. Then what is the systems? What is our system of morals? What are the codes we live by? What are the things we hold dear? What are our values? Are very important. I think it's very important to study at any age medical ethics, biomedical ethics. You may say, well, how is my 7-year-old going to study biomedical ethics? Well, you wouldn't use that terminology. You wouldn't use sophisticated terminology. But at an early age, you might want to talk about what do we as a family value? The kind of considerations of medical ethics are whether or not decisions as they used to be made are made by paternalism. In other words, does dad decide everything about a family's health? Does dad say, yes, we're going to do this, and no, we're not going to do this? Or do we work with what's called beneficence? Do we have each person in the family, whoever's the decision maker, or the knowledge provider, do they look at each person and say, I'm going to try to help them understand what I understand, given who they are? Children have beliefs, teenagers have beliefs. I'm going to try to help them understand by looking at them, explain the knowledge I have, and let them try to use their beliefs and my knowledge and respect that, which would be beneficence. Autonomy is a belief system that whatever you believe in, your autonomy matters the most. You should make your own decision. It's not always, doesn't turn out to be as terrific as it sounds. Yes, autonomy is important. So on the other hand, if something very severe is happening and all you get is a letter, on an internet portal that says, by the way, you have cancer, look it up, good luck. You don't feel so good about being autonomous, finding out information and being left shriveling with fear. You'd like to know who's going to interface with you, who's going to help you understand it, look at your options. So I think when looking with our children, we ask questions and get them to ask questions about how we make decisions in our family and what is the method we want our family. Do we want to say that our family leader financially or intellectually makes decisions? Do we want them to try to explain them and have us understand their wisdom? And do we have a vote in it? If not a numerical vote, a conscious vote, can you hear my voice vote? Do we want everybody to randomly decide what's important for them without any alignment? Families don't work well that way, but at least they could honor each other's voices. You have a voice. I think you want to try to begin that now in an era where people are concerned about whether we'll all have our freedoms, certainly within our family and family office. We want to provide a safe environment to be heard. At the same time, we teach alignment and collaboration for what's important for the office itself and the family they serve. It serves as a safety valve. It serves as a manifestation of our best ability to serve a family when we grow ourselves and contribute to that family office. So that we went through only 2 of the topics, but I'll tell you the rest of them. Spirituality, which really is about aligning with your purpose and a higher purpose. And there are family offices that serve families that have greater or lesser spirituality, but spirituality has become really a lot about aligning with purpose. And I think we've talked about this often. How does a family office get people to the best caliber people that they can, or even people working better than you would have thought on paper? You do that by being someone they want to align with. If your family office represents and works with a family that they admire and enjoy what they do, they will come and work for you under the toughest of circumstances. So alignment with purpose for the people in your office can be very beneficial to the family that they serve. The 4th category was given to me by the wonderful young entrepreneur, Fatima Hadani, who was in the middle of Ramadan at the moment. I was fasting when I spoke to her yesterday. And she said, Stephen, I love this curriculum, but you have forgotten love. She said, is there not an examination of love in a time of loss and separation? And I said, and bear in mind, she creates, technology for good, long distance technology for good, aerial technology for good. And she said, oh, absolutely. I would love to do that. So you have people suggesting ideas with a great deal of knowledge and wisdom and writing and reading about them, saying, let's learn that. So spirituality and love, that's the end of what you might say, boy, those are really soft. The next things are the acquisition of neurocognitive skills. And our brain is a group of cells. It's really effective when its different parts form networks for different capabilities, even more effective when those networks in different areas work together. So certainly the FOA community is familiar with this, that mindfulness, which is a practice of emptying your mind, not completely, but not going down a rabbit hole when thoughts are kind of circulating every day. What's the breaking news? What's my fear? And but instead having the equanimity from a quiet and peaceful, just taking in everything and being aware of it, but not following it. And heartfulness, its important sister, the ability to see problems and difficult emotions with a loving understanding that we're all capable, that none of us are infallible, that we all have failing. Mindfulness and heartfulness, which leads to a loving of other people, a greater peace in the world, is a great place to start educating your brain. And mindfulness, interestingly, then leads to your ability to do other very important things. So it's helpful and connected with emotional intelligence, which is probably the most important thing in this kind of circumstance. We know that you can only improve your emotional intelligence so much. You've had many experts on emotional intelligence speak. I won't even begin to make myself appear to know as much as great experts on emotional intelligence. But a community can develop a lexicon for emotional intelligence. It can use one of the different systems, whether the wonderful system that Mark Brackett at Yale has developed, Ruler, other wonderful experts in emotional intelligence and thought leaders have other systems equally effective and wonderful, I think. You can become a more emotionally intelligent family office at a time when emotions are running high and can overtake you, or you can be responsive instead of being reactive. You can be communicative and understood better. So emotional intelligence, executive function. When we are fearful and in difficulty or need to get something done, is our executive function that allows us to do that. It's a set of skills that you can acquire to be incredibly effective within a time frame. What grows out of that is also, so the executive function is also the ability to be cognitively flexible, to see new things, new data, take it all in and be effective in that moment. And the other neurocognitive skills that I would think about that were very important would be resilience that you develop over time, and flow, the ability to be in your kind of state in the moment. It's the highest level of emotional intelligence. And working in flow when you're alone, it's really possible. You're working until you're not working. You're in your moment. You're in your highest thing. It's just coming out of you. It also brings joy. So you can be in a flow state when you're alone and disconnected. And the outcome of your work and what you're doing is not work. You're not working harder. You're literally one with what you're doing, is incredibly important. Teaching people how to authentically, from matching their capability with their task, be in a flow state. Can happen with kids in any age. So this education that we're talking about, understanding your family, a beginning understanding of ethics, not as a course, but as a sense of what do you value? Asking questions, what do you value? Why? What do we value as a family? Talking about what we think. You can have a purpose as a very young person. It may seem not a mature adult purpose. Some kids have one that they carry out their life, but helping people think, what's important to me? How can I contribute? How can I make meaningful contribution? Where's our relationship to love, to the different ways in which we have deep emotional connection to what we feel the most? Children certainly understand love. It's one of the things they feel and express the most or suffer the most in being absent from. So love is an important consideration when our parents are taxed, our families are taxed, our family offices are taxed. Love is vital. Appreciation of remembering that. Even it's to say once in a while in the most collegial kind of way, lots of love, right? It's just an expression. It doesn't have to be personal. It's just what abounds in a good environment. A feeling, a remembrance that we're all human beings that feed well from that, right? In the era we live in, we're more careful with our words and how we express them personally. But an environment can abound with good feelings of loving action toward each other. They're very different. To quickly go through the list, Angelo, it's going to be pretty long. If you have neurocognitive skills and you want to apply them, thinking skills, we're about number 6 on the list, but algorithmic thinking is particularly important. If there's going to be artificial intelligence, you need to learn to ask questions and understand the algorithms by which machines work in order for humans to be on top of them. So systems thinking, understanding how things fit together in pieces and work toward bigger puzzles. Algorithmic thinking, understanding the way that algorithms are created. And from an early age on, and you can do this with kids in blocks, you can teach algorithmic thinking as constructivist education, the way they do in many play schools. The beginning of that kind of thinking will allow human beings to continue to ask the important and correct questions of machines. And as long as we do that, as long as the more machines and technology are asked the right questions, as Christian Chrome again says, if you're going to go digital, we need to become more human. Our soft skills, our humanistic skills, our neurocognitive skills, our asking questions are what distinguish us from machines and allow us to continue to query them in a way that they serve us and serve our purpose and our challenge. We couldn't begin that too early, but I don't know that most of us think that our 10-year-old or a 14-year-old is learning algorithmic thinking while we're home. But why not? We're sitting here wondering if there'll be jobs. Why are we not working on the thinking that will make them relevant in all kinds of ways immediately? So I'll also mention design thinking so that you as a group, as a family, can have a common set of inquiry, a common set of brainstorming. Before you try to come up with solutions for your family, you want the endpoint that everyone should feel satisfied and that everyone participates in a process. You'll notice there's a common theme here: individual growth and individual movement toward collective thinking to solve problems and collective satisfaction would seem to be the trend that we're looking at. So I'm halfway through. Let me take a breath, Angelo, because maybe you don't want to go through 16. 8 took quite a while.
Yes, but I do think it was important to help set the context for the audience. And right now, as we're about an hour in, I mean, this really is the heart from the intellectual and the spiritual perspective that we'll be discussing. Why don't I say a couple of words in terms of what we're looking to do with this? But I do think it is important, and you are leaving off where we have communication, which is going to be incredibly important, and many other topics, but we'll go through them quicker than the first half. But in terms of my context to it, Stephen's just brilliant at what he does. He has a global Rolodex of the best, from medical to scientific to educators to so many others, mentors, and incredibly connected with the millennials and the younger generation. What we are looking to do, and Stephen is one of the world leaders at working with highly successful families and individuals to really, what's more important for them is going to be the personal growth of their children. It was one of your wonderful thought leaders, Stephen, that said, you're only as happy as your unhappiest child, no matter how much money you have or they feel they have. And they'll often feel that's a burden, by the way. And I know people are going to listen to this and say, a burden? What are you kidding me? It's a burden for many of them. They didn't create it. They're inheriting it. And that comes with a perspective of responsibilities. They want to be stewards of it. These are things that they're thinking about in today's society and what we're going through that is going to be so challenging for them, that an opportunity for you as an elder in the generation and for them, and let's not leave out the family office, the family enterprise, the foundation, to be involved in something that you're not going to learn in school. There's no college courses for this. There's really nothing. And to have someone like Stephen who's spearheading this and putting it together, I think is amazing. And the fact that I happen to be involved with it. So what we're going to be doing, and we'll allow Stephen to finish up a little quicker, the final 7 or 8 in a second, is we're working together on putting let's call it a masterclass. Now, originally, we planned this months ago before COVID and wanted to do it in person, maybe over a 2 or 3 or a 4-day period. And one day, whether later this year or maybe more realistically next, that will happen. But in the meantime, sometimes you can't be patient, you got to take action. So we'll be creating something virtually. Some of it may be recorded and some of it will be live via Zoom online. That would be an opportunity to be hands-on in a masterclass environment where Stephen and his wonderful group of, again, mentors, educators, and thought leaders, and from my perspective, bringing the family from the family office perspective and the family office itself, making sure that what you're learning ties in and provides value to that. I mean, I've given master classes on how to create a family office, on technical proficiency in the family office, the virtual family office, but this ties in the human element. Combined with that is going to make it a special experience. So my members will get a special opportunity to participate, and perhaps those that are friends and relationships, we'll consider what we could do for them. But I want to do something very specific for my members of Family Office Association. Some of it may be inclusive relative to their membership, but for a really significant part of it, that may be more one-on-one. I mean, again, Stephen's time is incredibly valuable. Of course, there's going to be a cost for that, but a cost that would be understood coming in from Family Office Association, something beneficial. I'm going to allow Stephen to go through the final 7 or 8. He's going to go through them a little quicker, but I think they're really important. We're really, really important. We're not in a rush here to fulfill a timeline on a meeting. We're here to impart deep education, and this is meant to be a complex conversation and dialogue to move things forward during a crisis that we're going through that is causing grave concern among families of all types, rich or poor, and the enterprises that represent them, and the fear that executives have about the changing dynamic in the family office world, their age relative to understanding the next generation in technology. And now this is thrust upon them. And this is an opportunity to learn. Stephen, I'm going to let you take over. I think beginning again with your number 7, communication skills, is incredibly important. If you don't mind, please continue.
Okay, I'm going to give myself 15 minutes, 20 at the most, to finish up, Angelo, if that will be okay.
Go for it.
So I want to put a context around this in saying that. 5 words. First one's Passover. And why do I say Passover? In the tradition of my grandparents and my parents, once a year they had a meal, a very ordered meal in 15 parts. And that meal, right in the middle, that gathering, that Seder, he had a meal in the beginning. And everybody paid a lot of attention to the first 7 or 8 parts. They ate dinner. And then in 5 minutes, they said, well, we'll do the second half next year. And that's the great tradition of families, is to do the first half of the gathering and not do the second half. So as we're rushing through the second half now, I'm thinking how interesting. It's always that way. Who can get through 15 parts of anything? It's just too tiring. So I will try to make this relevant in the second half. I want to say 3 words that are relevant here, 3 more. One is birds. For family office, I want to say to you, keep in mind the concept of birds, and keep in mind a word that Angelo, you and I pronounced with each other a couple of times, syncytium, and purpose. So why birds? As we finish this up, why birds? I'm sure even from our inside in our yards, wherever we are, we still see birds flying around. And individual birds are beautiful. But when you look up in the sky and you see thousands of birds traveling in one direction, and then suddenly changing direction and looping and moving much more complexly and beautifully than any group of blue angels or pilots could do. Literally thousands of them speeding in one direction and suddenly moving in another direction and then in another. You realize that there's some ability of knowledge, communication, and emotional intelligence that those birds have that we don't have. And that any organization that can move like birds, ascending, slowing, speeding, turning, in precision, yet as individuals, are extraordinarily advanced. You could see it when massive numbers of dolphins are swimming and turning also, and other fish. What do they have? They have to have the ability to maintain speed. And yet, they have to sense when each one of them are beginning to move and almost move simultaneously. We know now that when they change, there's not one leader. The leader in the front is not the leader from behind. They're switching partners. They're switching leads. Well, to go from being the leader to the follower, you have to have tremendous emotional intelligence. What about when you turn to the side? Something else is leading. They're sensing each other and moving. So this is not to say that someone's not the CEO or the CFO, and certainly not to say that someone's not the head of the family. But we're saying in certain circumstances, why we may maintain a sense of hierarchy and rank, brilliant moving beyond what human capability is now allows for fluid lead in certain circumstances. It's the highest element of trust, understanding, neural capability, is that when we deploy to solve something, the lead, the person taking on that role, has the trust and honesty of everybody, including the kind of hierarchical head. We fully empower everyone to do the most in the most important circumstance. When we do that, we're at our fullest capability, and when we're all working together in empowering that human being, that individual. Just ask yourself, how did those birds move and fly? That's what artificial intelligence can give to human beings. The ability to simultaneously know information, share and move, shift lead, shift questions. If we can move that way with our fullest capabilities constantly understood, we can do things that we're not capable of now as a family office and as a family. But you need to educate yourself emotionally, psychologically, historically, communication skills, personal sang-froid, lack of the ego that doesn't make room for anyone else to move that way. So I think birds are a great model for the next level of family office working in whatever the future is, even if it looks like, even if we go back to what the best parts of the past were and then move forward to a future, the family office with neurocognitive skills, communication skills, a higher purpose, room for everybody, and the rest of the skills we're going to talk about now, are going to do brilliant in any circumstance. So we were talking about thinking skills. We mentioned systems thinking so that you can look at parts of something and use them interchangeably and have a system for working, not just random thoughts. Algorithmic thinking, teaching problem solving, especially to sit on top of what machines do for us. Design thinking, so we work as a group. Brain hacking, and Patricia Saluda, wherever you are in the world, you're one of the world's great brain hackers. We know her in the FOA community. She comes up with hacks, ways to kind of change your circuitry in short term in response to solving problems. And wherever you are, much love to you, Patricia. I hope you'll join us in helping in this curriculum. Communication skills. The next thing, number 7 on the list, we need to speak. There's a program now called Forever Fluent. If you've ever thought about learning language, the person who's created it, you can master a language in an hour a day in 6 months, fluency. You can take 3 languages and it still works. Well, why would you do it when you have Google Translate? I think everybody should be learning a new language at this moment. And why do that? Because all languages reflect culture and circumstance in which they are created, right? Modern Ivrit was created by Israel to make it different than their predecessors in history and to be fast and effective. German is on the opposite end of the scale. There's a way to examine science and detail. There's the Entwicklungsmechanik mechanic of things and the Entwicklungsgeschichte of things with the life force of it. So when biologists were describing fate maps for life, the language was perfect. It allowed for detail, for tense, for motion, for spirit. It had embedded in the language was the capability of describing things differently than saying, well, something's here or over there or over there. It had room for detail. Every time you learn a language and you learn how other people think, the more you do it, the more evolved your understanding is. But just one language brings you closer to appreciating the difference between human beings and the sameness. And this is a time we need to do this. So I think using a program that makes you fluid in a short period of time and the joyful connection to other human beings from understanding the language thing, the communication of doing that. Not 12 years of audiolingual material, but becoming fluid by listening to sound patterns is a gorgeous experience. Again, we're not talking about specific programs here because it's a non-commercial program, but there are beautiful things out there for being able to develop fluency and appreciation of culture and other mind so that we're connected. The next, I'm going to say music, art, and dance. In this time period, even alone, doing music, art, we all know about your brain on music and the value of music and art. They are the way we teach all those neurocognitive skills in my programs, neurocognitively. By dancing tango, you can master a lot of the things we just talked about. Executive function, emotional intelligence, resilience and flow. You can do them all dancing. There's nobody to dance with. Put on the music and dance with yourself. It's not all about steps. I'm participating in a country or worldwide garden video from my garden on the weekend, in which I'll be doing Tai Chi sword and tango by myself in costume in a garden along with other people, celebrating the importance of dance and music and culture, even if we're here. It's not all television. And Hofesh Schechter, the great choreographer, in one of his dance performances that I saw years ago, said something to the effect that wherever there's war, where there's disruption, there's always hope because there's dance. When you express yourself through your art and your culture, it stops you from being overcome by these memes, by these thoughts. You reach your highest place, reaching into your art and your music and your dance. And whether you have a summer or whether you have 6 months or a year, part of what you should be doing with your brain, your body, your joy is dance and music and art. It changes your brain too and reinforces everything you're learning. And what is this for then? The next step is, what is this for? It's to identify everything we've done, all of these things to date, identify what you're passionate about, see if that can help you understand your purpose, how you might use that passion in this moment. What's your purpose now? Why you're here in your greater place? People are discovering their purpose all the time now as they align with things they go on. How will the planet be better? How can we help the economy? How can we help our neighbors? People, I know people in careers that you wouldn't think of as being in service to others, yet while they're at home doing their legal work, They're really working with their neighbors in a way that they never got a chance to do while they were working on documents. I know people, who are medical people, but they're growing plants in their backyard and discovering, what it might be to be self-sustaining and be doing organic farming. Finding your purpose and your passion because circumstance put you someplace new is what this is mostly about. This education helps you find yourself. And when you're comfortable with it, your family, identifying what you're passionate about, what your purpose in this moment is, and contributing it in every way you can, looking for places to contribute it, online forums, groups meeting and planning, sharing of your financial resources. We can do incredible things at a distance. And we're not all unable, we're not all completely shuttered in. Whether without masks or with masks or whatever way we're out, society is not only shut in, we're not hopelessly in caves. And there's so much we can contribute to those that are going out by what we're doing inside ourselves and within our walls and when we go out. So our purpose. And then what else would we study? Well, we've talked a lot about artificial intelligence under the general idea of exponential technologies that learn and learn from themselves. In this general area, artificial intelligence, big data, quantum computing, and sensors are words that can be familiar to middle school children, high school children, college students in ways that are much more accessible than a year-long course in which you're getting graded on doing a performance. So we've gone to people with expertise in these areas and say, help us understand it. Chunk this into how you can know enough about this to know how you relate to it. Do you want to work in the area? How can you turn it to greater good? How might you turn your resources to potentiate its best use? Or if you're a medical exam, for instance, depends on big data. I mean, if you speak, there's 153, 156 muscles in your voice, Angelo. Say something. Angelo, say something else.
Hello, Stephen. How are you?
So big data and computers can hear that and diagnose vast numbers of likely conditions that different parts of your body are in. It does it better and better all the time. Now that may be better than a lot of clinicians can do it. This is not my work. This is the work of futurists looking at this technology and technology people. So if you're going to have your likely medical condition or circumstance understood by your voice being analyzed or your iris being looked at or a sensor that you touch, you might want to know what that is. What is it they're really sensing? What does it mean to have somebody hear your voice and write on a chart? Not because you're examined, because data has a probability distribution that says 99.99% of people whose voice is like this have these conditions. Or I think there's something you can tell about pregnancy by typing on a computer, and also about cognitive decline, just by your keystrokes, how you type. Big data will tell people how that typing pattern relates to an artificial intelligence in tandem. What does that tell you about the condition of that person, certain kind of conditions? You might want to understand just what that means, because you give up your sovereignty if you don't even understand what this is based on. It's one thing to go to your doctor, have them examine you and say, this is what you have, but you have the right to go and say, I want a second opinion. What does it mean to get a second opinion from data when hundreds of thousands or millions of people's data result in you having a diagnosis or at least a stated condition? You might want to know where that comes from and what it means. And I'm not talking about to fight it. I'm just saying it's not useful to be in a system where you don't understand its components. So at a young age, you might want to understand the future of health and medicine, how things are being looked at. At an older age, you might want to start to understand the digital technology that's involved, or the ideas. Maybe you want to work in it. Maybe you want to think about what a future doctor or a future health provider might look like. They may be interpreters of big data. Some of them will be people with very human soft skills, explainers of data. The more you know, the more you can align with the purpose and work toward it early on, instead of being at the end of it, coming to the edge of a cliff and going, oh, wait a minute, we're not doing this anymore. I trained for 7 years to do this, but we're all unemployed. The people doing this had a different set of skills. Why not get the precursor skills now? And as things come closer to realizing, get the final skills and be right in it. That's what I'm certainly thinking about my children and my students. What are the precursor elements? What are the building blocks of relevance and success now and in the future? And then if we go back to college and school, all the better. But with those building blocks, what we bring into classroom, what we bring in, reading is one of the things we think you should do. We all have time to read narrative stories now and be informed by books in a way we didn't. In our communication skills, we want to read. It's been lost. We learned so much emotionally from reading. It's really on our longer list of how we gain emotional intelligence and think about things. We finally have time to read books and share the stories with our children. It was lost for a while in an only digital rushed age. So all of this feeding and nurturing ourselves to the purpose of being relevant and being ready and being at our fullest capacity is a beautiful thing. So exponential technologies, health and well-being, I think we should all understand a good deal about nutrition, body systems, current medicine and health, light and energetics and non-allopathic practices, all of these types of health and well-being. The great Fred Nazem, who many of you in the family office universe probably know, has developed an amazing program called Rejuvenant, 10 biomarkers of your health that I think will be rolled out for seniors so we can understand what their health looks like when there's an emergency. There are new ideas about how to understand markers for your health and ways to plug into the medical system. If you understand the basics of body and wellness, the importance of nutrition, Ray Gill, we're all worried about inflammation right now. It's a part of this COVID circumstance. Plant-based diets greatly reduce inflammation tremendously. And that may be relevant in cognitive decline. It may be relevant in systemic disease. The more you do to reduce your inflammation, your general lifespan, injuries, it would seem that that's an important thing. So learning about the mechanisms of wellness and illness without in any way trying to practice medicine here, but just an education about the best thoughts about wellness and health and the future of light and energetic medicine. And when that may happen, it may seem a little like Star Wars now, Heidi Roddenberry, and as part of the next gen community. I think Gene certainly intuited this far off energetic stuff, but it's great. And there are places in the world that there's exploration now of how that may help our practice of health and medicine. I'm not touting a particular technology. I'm saying, isn't it exciting to learn what might be on the horizon when it comes out? The more we learn, the more we are ready for, and in fact contribute to the bringing about of great possibility. And at the same time, that's what ethics teaches us, how to tell the difference between what do we value. We want to make sure we understand what's real. There's a lot of people that practice disaster capitalism or economics, where everything that people offer doesn't mean it's good or good for you. You want to have a thinking, you want to work as a family system to understand how you research things and understand what's real or not real, or valuable but not valuable. But what's valuable to you, that's important. So let's make sure that we have that opportunity. And Angela, speaking of technology, just to mention, my watch is foiling us.
You shut the phone off, but not the watch.
All of you who understand the family office community, Iva Kaufman is calling. I'm sure she's called all of you at one time or another. So as we finish up here, I think the last two things that I'll mention, so we've covered almost all of them. One is gathering as humanity. Gathering has become very important, even virtually. What's the importance of how we gather? What organizations are using platforms to value? If you have children, there are amazing learning platforms right now to communicate with other cultures. If you're an adult, there are platforms like BOMA in which people are gathering and sharing culture, working toward ideas. The wonderful Brandon Keating, who's a fabulous next gen, has a platform called Unify, in which he's bringing people together for important areas of purpose and like purpose. And of course, the intergenerational collab is a fabulous gathering of people that I'm an elder for. You will want to study gatherings and what their value is into and outside of your office. And in that sense, I'll go back to neurocognitive skills and say that when we teach neurocognitive skills, and many of you have been students or mentored in our program, we have a saying that you learn them with a particular orderly flow. And that is, you learn it first for your own consciousness, for your own ability. You rewire your cells, you learn to have them communicate with each other, groups of cells, like your amygdala communicating, your emotions communicating with your executive function and your prefrontal cortex. We learn first for our own consciousness, for our own self. To make the learning stronger, we invite our friends in, virtually or in person. So if I'm teaching somebody drumming, because executive function is well learned by drumming, teaching someone drumming, and then we get their friends to drum together. We have kids all over the country drumming with Rick Royal every day, groups of kids, and we invite in, a virtual Ringo, not the real Ringo. We invite in a virtual Charlie Watts from a video, and now we have 3 or 4 or 10 kids drumming along with Charlie, right? I mean, they're doing incredible video. They're watching a video, but they're making believe they're in the Stones, or they're making believe they're in Blind Faith or Cream. They're learning as a community. It gets stronger. The communication gets stronger. Once they're a community, we encourage them to learn it in their family. That becomes a culture. We have families in all kinds of places, dancing, doing Tai Chi sword, doing art together. It becomes part of the cultural statement of their family, but it's reinforcing respect, emotional intelligence, communication. And then what's the last part of it? Well, what's FOA? It's a group of families communicating. Has FOA ever been stronger than it is now, Angelo? Everybody wants to reach out and communicate. When families and family communicate in a family office, we start to mimic that sensation of the heart. We're all independent families. We have our own family offices, but what are we doing? We are coming together under leadership and guidance and sharing. We're not quite birds, but we're learning and we're changing direction and we're following. At the same time, we're taking leads. And once family offices reach out to family offices, and we do this nationally and internationally, we're one of the great forces in the world. The power of success and wealth for good and for sustainability and for our own sustaining of our families, communicating, is one of the most efficient and brilliant networks on the planet. And if we can communicate outward, I know, Angela, you're in dialogue with people all the time in other groups. The more that we learn and share within ourselves, within our families, talking to each other, within our wonderful FOA community, and on occasion FOA talking with other communities, because there's a greater need outside even than FOA, and we're certainly international in every way among our families. That's what gives me the greatest hope. And hopefully that will be simulated by people who might not have the same resources and abilities and educations and historical generational success. But the more we share that with our family office and the people who work in our family offices, and they go out and share it in their communities, what they learn in serving families, what they do, it permeates in their children, in their schools, in their communities. There's a saying about mindfulness that you learn more as a child, not from where your teacher teaches you, but how they sit straight-lined and steady. And to all of you, the more you sit straight-lined and steady, the more the people that share your mission and vision and take it home and go, well, we may not be a great family of power and success, but I want a mission and vision in my own family. I want to kind of enumerate my capitals. I want to give thanks to my joys. I want to talk about how we lead. We want to have succession. They may not have the same attorneys to create documents. They may not have the same trusts, but they have the same desires to pass on things to their generations. You are creating an ecosphere of greatness from how your families work, from how your family systems and offices teach their employees, from how they go out in their children and their environment. It's one of the great places. From what Angelo gathers and what you learn and teach, that goes out and permeates in communities. And it's such a potential great seeding for success and thriving in our communities that I hope you all every day appreciate that you're really seeding great opportunity for everybody by your own comportment and what you share with your family office and what your family office should be learning to help you. The goal of this is to make your family office totally capable for you in the family office to thrive and be joyful and to have a spirit of goodness in the midst of hard times. And I'd like to say finally, the last saying on our opening letter was Rozo Yoroshiku Onegai Shimasu. And what that means in Japanese means come learn with me. In Japan, you don't really say it as an educational statement. It says, if you really want to do the real thing, if you want to do real business, let's just do it authentically together. And I say it to all of you. Say it each day. If you're going to do something as an enterprise, don't go, yeah, it's great, it's cool, man. Really, do it with fullest heart and intention. And every day, everything you do, everything we all do, will get us through this and into a much better future, including all the great things that we had in the past, and the distant past, and the future that we want.
Now, Stephen, as we head to the end, and we got about 3 minutes left, and we'll give families an opportunity how they can learn more about you and this curriculum. One thing kind of related, I know you're very busy with the team at Stanford biodesigners on cytokine to make this novel coronavirus non-lethal. You are also writing a book about it and a screenplay about how humanity is coming together. I think it is called Synatium. Of course, I know I'm messing it up, but you'll correct me.
Sure. So the screenplay for the film is called Syncytium, the same as what the heart is, a functional syncytium. Every cell in the heart can beat on its own, and yet and has independence, the same as we do, yet they choose to follow a leader. These indistinct cells in the AV and the SA node, we all follow them in a wave of polarization. Let's our heartbeat is one and not as a bag of worms. It's kind of a model. We think of us being heart-centered creatures. At some point, we were kind of a oneness, and a move back toward that oneness. Futurists like Christian Crom think that's where we're moving, a oneness of consciousness, inspired by machines to let us work together. And as our art and our other things come together, Christian wrote a book called Humanification, and its subtitle was Go Digital, Stay Human. Because the more machines are important to us, the more important it is that we elevate our humanness that sets us apart and lets machines work for us instead of rule us, or let people who have machines control us, and instead that we're all a thriving humanity. So we didn't rename the book, but the people that we're all working on, we're calling the initial idea Syncytium, because we're trying to find the forces that move us to the full power of our capabilities for the benefit of all the good things that we're trying to do. Yes, at the onset of this virus being known, I'd had the good fortune to meet some people from who are graduates of the fabulous Stanford Biodesign program. These are people who come from all walks of life: engineers, PhDs, physicists, people who decide that they want to create devices to help in the medical world, the whole field of interventional cardiology. I think it's honest to say began when the great Dr. Paul Yock, who's the co-head of the founder of the Stanford Biodesign thing, began the whole field of, kind of interventional cardiology with some of his early inventions. One of the great minds and hearts on the planet. And his graduates in his program have gone on to create amazing devices in different ways. And I was introduced to some of them, and they were looking at different types of inflammation for other reasons. And when they saw some of the data that came out of Wuhan about inflammation and storms, they said, do you want to gather some people and see if we can maybe find some way to intervene with all this inflammation? Maybe that will be of help. And that turned into an effort to look at ways to mitigate the so-called cytokine storm using photoimmunology. And I make no statement about whether or not it's going to turn out to be valid or even tested, but that's what we were working at, looking at ways that tested ways to modulate the immune system, might possibly contribute to the great efforts of scientists everywhere in all walks of life. Those looking at all kinds of interventions, we salute every one of them, looking to see if there's a small part that what we're looking at may play a part in keeping safety together. And it'll remain to be seen. It'll have to be tested, but it's been an honor just to try.
And Stephen, how can people learn more about the curriculum that we discussed and other projects? You're always working on something that you're involved with.
Nope. Let me just mention the great founders of Cytokine. John McMahon, great serial device designer, and the amazing Ben Wang, who's a CAR-T cell scientist who went into this whole field because of a family loss, and our advisors who've worked in the area of photoimmunology and other diseases. I just want to say, every day I work with them. Joxel Garcia, former Undersecretary of Health, just being in their presence Adele Diamond, the great neurocognitive scientist, has come on a board, a line of bridges at the Mayo Clinic. Just being in their presence makes you feel humanity can rally for great things. And I mentioned that collectively working toward a good end is inspiring every day. Get up every day and just want to work just from being in the presence of people like that. I'm sorry, Angela, you have to restate the question. I couldn't help mention how.
Sure. How can people learn more about the curriculum we discussed and other projects that you're working on?
Sure. Great. Again, to avoid being commercial at all, it's an Apple podcast. I don't want to be commercial on Apple Podcasts. I love this podcast. I've had schools ask me in New York, what can we teach during the summer? What will be helpful? There's a reluctance of students to just go into distance learning all year long. And so part of this grew out of this. My great friend, Roddy Stewart, who's the headmaster at York Prep and a great educator, guy graduated double I honors at Oxford in law, wonderful thinker and educator. He and I have been in a dialogue, what's important in the summer? How can kids use their summer well before getting back? So it kind of inspired the conversation about, what schools, boarding schools, people, universities, how can it be used? So one aspect of this will be, hopefully there's a chance to do that. We'll get overwhelmed at some point, but we've had lots of requests from individuals and families to mentor them or mentor their children in the way that I historically have, to work in engagements with families as the family office ecosystem does, in the same way that all of the wonderful thought leaders and educators in the family office world work with families, and you all know who they are. I don't think I need to mention why all the great people at Wise Counsel Learning, all the other wonderful places that do mentoring of families, and then my own work is often with their children, and then families become involved because it's an integrated effort. So you can certainly contact me if that's of interest to you. And I want to say about all my colleagues and amazing people who write in the field. They're all terrific. Our focus is on experiential learning, less than academics. So we're really there to kind of go through activities, joyful family activities together. And they work well virtually too. We gather families at great distance to expand their consciousness, their community, their culture, what they do, how they communicate. So you can certainly contact me or contact me through you. I'm not going to give my information on a podcast, but people can find me through you, I suppose, if they want to. And so I think individual mentoring is great, but we're going to create a platform and master classes. I think it's really important to share good ideas, especially if they're ideas that families will then shape and use themselves. The great Krishnamurti, the great philosopher, was once asked to create a technology for a new world, and he stopped short. And I couldn't possibly just hold up his suspenders, but he stopped short and said, "You don't want my thoughts and ideas that will shape the world too much." I don't put myself in a league, with students of Krishnamurti or students of Krishnamurti. So this curriculum is not about Stephen Rudin's ideas. It's about Stephen Rudin having talked to lots of great people that I've had the great fortune to know that would like to teach and help and share ideas for families in their own way with their own educations to really shape the immediate present future based with wonderful ideas and wonderful teaching that they can then work through themselves and become stronger and fuller and take their passion, turn it to their potential, and be working more diligently now in ways they enjoy.
That's fantastic. This was amazing, Stephen. I'm going to give a little bit of a close, and everyone, that was Dr. Stephen Rudin, R-U-D-I-N, and he's amazing, and I am honored to call him a friend and to work with him on a project like this, what we're loosely calling a masterclass, initially virtually, eventually in time, will be, as we originally planned, in person. And these are all the things that we've needed to adapt relative to the COVID-19, and my members know many of this already. But in my close, I'm Angelo Robles. I'm the host of Angelo Robles' Effective Family Office podcast, and I'm the founder and CEO at Family Office Association, a membership organization dedicated to successful families and their family offices. We do proprietary content. We host global programming, on hold a little bit now with COVID, but we converted, we adapted, and we're doing daily online meetings with amazing thought leaders like Stephen Rudin today and Jeremy Grantham coming up next week, and just so many different others. as well as peer-to-peer with the families only that are kept very private. This has been an amazing, busy, and creative time for me and the organization. I'm writing like I never wrote before, even the books I've done prior, and just really coming up with, I hope, a lot of ideas to provide value broadly to the community and certainly for my members, those that support us and see the value of being a member. Tabletop simulation, which is what if disaster planning scenarios for families and their family offices, the rise of the virtual family office, remote and technology are all things that we've just dived into. And really, it's been eye-opening, awakening, and very valuable to my relationships. And this special project that it was so eloquent to talk to Stephen, this kind of masterclass, this really deep, immersive, hands-on experience, which we're still shaping up. It's almost ready, but it really is an exciting, exciting time. We encourage you to reach out. I'm very active on social media, Family Office Association on Instagram, Family Office on YouTube, and of course my websites, familyofficeassociation.com, AngeloRobles.com, and preferred email would be angelo@familyofficeassociation.com. Thank you all for listening in live. Thank you to our audience that will see this on YouTube or hear it on Apple or Stitcher or whatever platform that you may use. And of course, thank you for the time and commitment of our special guest, Dr. Stephen Rudin. Stephen, always a pleasure. Look forward to the next time. Thank you all.
Thank you, Angelo.